Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here with you today. And someday I hope to make it to Bates and see what this puddle is that you speak of and get to experience that firsthand of it freezing over. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So my thanks to Ann Bates for bringing me in and to Michelle for being sort of my co-host and producer of this today. We're here to talk about digital etiquette and redefining courtesy in this age of AI. There's a lot going on in this age. And I'm delighted to sort of be back with Bates because it was about a year ago that, there we go. About a year ago, there was a very popular quote out that said, AI might not replace you, but a person using AI could. And so we did actually a webinar about what were the future skills in the age of AI. And we thought if all this data and information is easily available at our fingertips, what are the skills that we need now to even be more productive? And we came up with a cadre of things, both sort of new skills, existing skills, critical thinking, problem solving, decision making, data analytics, as well as some human skills, emotional intelligence. Our leadership and communication was equally important, and also embracing our timeless skills of ancient wisdom and practices. And so that's good. And the skills are still, very much a part of moving forward in the age of AI. But today, it's not so much about upskilling as it is about uplifting, because our skills are going to be constantly changing. And our skills will always be there and always be important, but it seems ever so increasing that there's this shift to focus on how do we show up as humans with one another? How do we connect? How do we interact? And how do we uplift and uphold one another? And so that's what we want to focus on today by looking at it through the lens of sort of etiquette and courtesy and uplifting. So why is this important? So again, our skills will become obsolete, but those qualities that we have as humans that hold us together, like trust, communication, safety, mental well-being, morality, ethics, these are the things that really connect us and help us grow. So we want to make sure they are ever present within our world. And it's really these elements that come together that provide this foundational piece for human flourishing. And when we talk about human flourishing, we're talking about what do we need as individuals to thrive socially, emotionally, and intellectually, and put that all together. And we're going to see that courtesy is really a big part of how we interact with one another, how we do that with respect and sort of honor the humanness of coming together. So yes, it's one thing to be productive. We always want to be productive in our workplaces and in our world, but to really thrive as well and be everything and be our best selves. That is the why behind why we're looking at courtesy. So a little focus on what we're going to cover today. And I just think I'll mention with my co-host here, Michelle, we do have something that looks like this, a job aid. And for sure, we're going to pass it out with the PowerPoint slides that you'll get as a follow-up with the recording to this. But I didn't know if that's something that you could put in the chat if people wanted to follow along with it, Michelle, or
let me see what I can do. Yep.
Okay, work your magic. We were talking about magic earlier, so there's our opportunity.
Will do.
And it was funny because we'll talk about AI and everything, but just today I try and stay up on what are the new advances. And this week's headlines about AI said there is a new piece of software called infography, which you feed it a source material. I have to figure out what source means. Can I feed it this? But it will create an infographic for you. And I was like, this this topic was too complex for me to make an infographic using text and everything. So I went, oh, what the heck? I'm just going to draw it out. And so that's what you'll see. But won't it be interesting to see what it could come up with? So again, the world, the domain, the age of AI is always changing. So what a perfect time at the end of the year. Here we are in December to take a pause, to take a breath and just go, where are we at with this? What can we do? What can we sort of shift into the new year? And you'll see that when you see this, this sort of cheat sheet, this job aid, whatever you want to call it, and in the upper left-hand corner, it has this little box that says, we're moving from 2024 to 2025, from upskilling to uplifting. And the gift of that is we can consider human flourishing. And there's some room there for you to write in your own. What are you moving away from in 2024? And what are you shifting to in 2025? So if so inclined, you can think about that through this presentation. What is your personal shift as you go through this? So for today, we're going to start with just some terminology, some language. So we're all on the same page. I know you know the meanings to these words, but let's just all sort of normalize on that. Then we're going to talk about what's going on and just some of the things that are new and happening in this world. And isn't that interesting? So we can all learn about that. Then we're going to talk about politely prompting, a little bit about, some of the rumors we hear around it and what's the psychology behind that. Talk a little bit about how we can influence it and what we feed into our prompting or our questions that we give to AI. So that's an interesting chunk. Then we'll talk about being Mr. Cellophane, a little homage to the musical Chicago. Mr. Cellophane was a character, totally transparent. So that's what we want to be as we're in this age. We'll talk about some bewares. And then we'll sort of bring it home and talk about, well, so what? What can we do with this information? How can we take this and model it, and do something with it out in the world? So it sounds like a pretty robust agenda. So who am I? Well, I'm here to say I'm not the granddaughter of Emily Post. I do not claim to be the queen of etiquette or courtesy, but I am an insatiable learner. I love topics like this and just getting deeply curious about them and exploring them and then sharing information about whoever will listen to them. So by background, I'm an organizational psychologist and a coach and all those things that Michelle was nice enough to say. I did start my career in IT and once in IT, never leave it, right? It will always be there. But even before that, I was a forest ranger. And so that availed me to be a systems thinker and look ecosystem wide at big things. And so I think everything in this world of AI and everything in our world that's going on is all interrelated. So how can we influence what's going on? I think it's a great question. And then you can see, I love Second City. I am an actor. I'm an improviser as well. And so just a lot of things, but that's who you got for you for the next few minutes in front of you. So let's do some grounding on terminology. So etiquette versus courtesy, two words that are used a lot, often interchangeably, especially as people are getting schooled on it, but they do have different meanings. And Michelle, were you able to push out that cheat sheet yet?
Yes, I did. Yep.
Okay, great. So if you have it, great. If not, I'll try and refer to it in such a way it doesn't matter if you have it or not. But you might notice on it, there's just a little icon of a book and it says etiquette are the rules of behavior, right? So etiquette is an older term. The rules of behavior are, think of it as the place setting at the dinner table. The fork is always on the left, the knife blade always inward towards the plate. The water glass always goes here. You always fold your napkin. You always pass the salt and pepper shaker together. Sometimes when I say that, people go, really? Yes, and as I talk about some of these etiquette rules, they're very formal. My daughter, who happens to be an event planner, she goes, oh gosh, mom, etiquette is no longer, it's not a thing anymore. It's like courtesy is, as we'll learn, it's about respecting each other and humans. But etiquette is like you can break all the rules. It's more about the tradition of it. And she does lots of events and weddings and everything. And she always keys into what's the tradition that the person wants. But the etiquette, it's more, do they respect the tradition of the formal place setting? If not, they don't have to do it. So they are formal rules, and there's a lot of them, and they're sometimes very interesting. Another example would be doing introductions, introducing the elder person to the younger person, introducing the person of more hierarchy first. Now it's more about making sure everyone's included and introduced and feels like they belong. The order is not so important. Okay, so etiquette is very, very formal. With courtesy, it's more about opening doors, passing a person and making eye contact. It's about treating one another with respect and kindness. It's more informal, but it's much easier and respectful and just plain kind. It's about connection and just basic humanness. Okay, so good. I'm now seeing that that's out there. I was looking to see if there were any questions. Not yet. That's good. Another term I just want to touch base on is AI. I'm not going to assume that everybody knows when I say AI or chat GPT. So let's just AI, artificial intelligence. That can mean a lot of things. Chat GPT is a form of generative AI where it's a piece of software that I can interact with, and it will generate things for me. It will generate text. When I ask it questions, it will generate text back. I can ask it to generate a picture, a table of something. Whatever I ask it to do, it will generate something back. So AI can also not be, it basically is, as our little book says, the ability of computers to simulate, not stimulate, to simulate humans. Could be machines or computers, but with the computers, we're thinking there's some logic built into that to simulate humans and human behaviors. Okay, so we encounter that with more than just what we think of Chat GPT. I mean, it's in our cars. It's in our watches. It's in our Spotify. It's in our Alexa, Siri. I mean, we're not even aware of how often and oh my gosh, I just triggered it. So now it's talking to me, shutting the door. And it's in our day-to-day life all the time. So you will find that when I'm talking about AI, as we go through the slides, a lot of times I will represent AI with a robot. And it's just easy for me to think that way. It's something concrete. But when I'm talking about having a conversation with AI, I'll refer to Chat GPT. Okay. So hopefully if you have questions on that, you can put them in chat. But this was sort of funny because when I was doing a lot of writing in college, I used to get cited a lot by my professors would say, Rocky, you're anthropomorphizing your words, right? You're giving human qualities to inhuman objects. And I went, okay, I finally get that. I'll stop doing it. And then I'm like, okay, I'm using a robot every time I talk about AI. So am I AI morphizing things now? So I started asking Chat GPT if I was AI morphizing, like anthropomorphizing, with humans and everything. And oh my gosh, you'll see in the notes of these slides, I put the conversation in there because I just it blew up my mind. It was like, I have to quit having this conversation with AI about this whole morphizing topic. So if that really fascinates you, I invite you to have a conversation with AI about AI morphizing. And, are we just like taking something like a robot and just, using that to represent the whole world now of the future and the world of AI? It's a fascinating question, and one probably that only I am interested in. But let's take a poll. So I'm interested, just in you, AI, artificial intelligence, however you describe it. Um, let's say, I say over time, but let's just say in the last year. Think of all of 2024. What have you seen in yourself as far as using it more, using it less, about the same, or you still aren't even sure what it is? That's okay. Where are you at?
Data's coming in right now.
It sure is.
It's like 56% of folks, oh, 59 say I'm using it more, 35% say I'm using it the same amount, 6% I'm using it less.
That's good. I am thrilled that nobody said, what is artificial intelligence? We know that about ourselves as a learning cohort right now. That's awesome. Yeah. So, and sometimes, I'm using it more. It might not even be intentionally, just because it's in our world more and other people who we deal with. It could be customer service. It could be our care providers, healthcare or medical care that are using it more. And so we're exposed to it more. But yeah, interesting stats. Thank you for that. All right. So in this age of AI, again, this quote, before it was all about, productivity and sort of a, scarcity mindset. It might not replace you, but a person using it could. And now we're seeing more of a shift towards, it really is here to augment you. It is not competing with you. It's not going to replace you, but it's here to sort of partner with you and increase the efficiency, the productivity, and on complex things to help ideate, to help with what are the options, to help with deep analytics and, brainstorm on creative endeavors. So with this is, the whole idea of just being aware. What is it? How is it being used? And at the same time, also going, yeah, there's going to be change. I mean, let's not close our eyes to that. There's going to be a lot of transitions as every week something new is coming out, new applications are coming out. There is undoubtedly a concern over the, privacy and security and what does this mean and what's being fed and what's real and what's not real. Yeah, we have to be totally aware of that. There's expectations around it. How fast, how is it going to be used, what is done with it, and the have and the have nots, the digital divides. Is it totally accessible to everybody and equally so? So we need to keep that in mind too and be sensitive to it. And again, as we're thinking about in a spirit of courtesy, how we connect and interact with people, being aware that these sensitivities exist is really important. So what is going on? Let's start to look at just some prevalences of AI just going on in our world. I think some of them are humorous. I asked Chat GPT, what's going on? I'm just figuring, I'll start with you, Chat. And said, not much, just here to chat and help with any questions. And then I sort of forget, oh yeah, Chat sort of lives in the present. It can access the past. It can sort of ideate on the future if you ask it, but it is totally living in the present based on what you are asking it. So instead, I'm going to ask you and how you feel about the future. So we're future facing now. We're going into this. How do you feel about the future of AI and its potential impact on our lives? Excited, curious, neutral, uncertain, concerned.
All right. Data appears to have slowed down. So the top is curious and interested in learning more, followed by excited and eager to explore its new applications, followed by uncertain, feeling that the full impact is not yet understood. And then in fourth place, neutral. And then last place, concerned.
Yeah. Good spread. I love the diversity of thought and, just, knowing where you are with that question is a great advance to see as you progress through the future. So if you're ever looking for a site that, it's just like, what is going on? What does the future look like? How is it being used? I highly recommend this data report, a global digital insights. It has so much information on how digitalization is being used throughout the world. And things like on average, people are spending over 7 hours per day online. That doesn't mean sitting at their desk at a computer necessarily. I mean, it could be I'm online, I'm listening to a podcast, I'm exposed to something that's using AI. That's just an incredible amount, but they break it down into where it is. So if you're interested in doing that, check it out. 58% of global web traffic is now from mobile devices. 58%. So of the traffic that's out there, wow, it's like people have it in their hands. It's like totally accessible to them. So they're not sitting necessarily, at a workstation. Um, and then over half of the global internet users are now interacting with AI-based tools, assistants, and that could be through, using AI to whatever content creation they need, or through customer service or virtual assistants. But this trend is going to continue. So this will be an interesting site to watch if you're interested or needing of stats. Just some other, things that I find interesting. A friend of mine knew I was doing this talk and sort of researching this there. You have to read this book, Rocky. This just came out. It's called In the Lives of Puppets. And the book explores what it means to be human and to have human connections with others. Okay, I'm probably on page 26. I was hoping to have read the whole thing by now, but I'm not quite seeing that being the theme of it. You can see that it's the retelling of the adventures of Pinocchio, but the human lives with three robots, right? And so it's like wow, this is a common thing now. This is a New York Times bestseller book, and it's like this is part of our storytelling now in our lives. This is a very popular, I mean, The Singularity is Near was a book that came out as a, I don't want to say a prequel to this, but earlier than this. And Ray Kurzweil came out with this book rather recently. The Singularity is Nearer, when AI and robots and computers merge with humanity. And we see that hybrid and that singularity coming together. And he believes that human consciousness and digitality, will lead to immortality, that they will be the same. And it's a very thick book, but there's a lot of stuff in there. Elon Musk, if you love him or not, he's definitely into the future. And he is all about, yes, there will come a time that we can upload the human mind and sort of preserve that. And they're even talking ethically about end of life options now that people have. Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Or would you like your brain and all existing data known to you to be uploaded into a digital form that could be in the form of a robot and continue to live on? Now, whether ethically, morally, spiritually, you believe in that, it's good, bad, that's up to you. But we are advancing into that age where that does become an end of life option. So these robots are really, that have a lot of artificial intelligence with them, are really a thing. This Optimus, which is by Tesla, 125 pounds, can do light lifting, housekeeping, has the detail enough to thread a needle. But after 2 hours of work needs to take a rest and recharge. And I went, wow, that's just like me. But that's Optimus, and they're seeing Optimus is going to be, the robot of the future. So much so that they have created the Tesla action figure Optimus for $40, which is already sold out for this Christmas season. But I put my name on a waiting list because I went, this thing works as a small miniature robot. So if you're interested, put your name on the waiting list. As soon as they're back in stock, they will notify you. But yeah, these things are becoming, the robotics is really becoming a place to house artificial intelligence in yet another form as well. So it's an interesting thing to watch for sure. Then, my favorite recent one is, I don't know how many of you have seen the new Coke commercial. In the 1990s, there was the original Coca-Cola is coming, and it was the trucks were bringing the Coke into the town, and it was very scenic and everything. Well, they regenerated this ad for 2024 using totally AI generated film, right? And if you haven't seen it yet, there's the link to it. I advise you go out. You can also on YouTube find the original 1990s stuff, and you can compare. What I found to be fascinating was looking at the comments in the 2024 ad. And they're just amazing. People are so enraged. This is so flat. This is so dehumanizing. This is so lifeless. This is wow, people are really offended by the use of AI with this. And then there's one gem of a line that the woman says, "Oh my gosh, why am I crying? It's a Coca-Cola commercial, for gosh sakes." But I mean, obviously she was still moved. She was still emotionally moved. So I invite you to go and watch it and see what you think and just scan through the comments. But it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, you can imagine how much money and resources they saved. They employed a lot of graphic artists, I'm sure, in making that commercial, but it's pretty fascinating to look through. So let's just see how you would feel. You may have not seen the commercial, but if you saw a commercial like that, and it was like you either knew it was generated by AI or you could tell it was, do you just enjoy it and let it go? Do you find it appealing? Not so appealing? Well, I'd like to see one. I'll watch that Coke one. Or
I did drop it into the chat as well, the link to the video.
great. So don't be watching that while I'm talking. No.
Not yet. Not yet. See, we do have some data. So it is tied between, I noticed it was AI generated and don't find it appealing. And then I haven't seen the ad yet, but I plan to watch it.
Yeah, good. Good. That's excellent. And I like people. I know a lot of people who have just blown up their TVs lately, or they just, walk out of the room when the commercials are going on. So interesting. So let's talk a little bit about polite prompting. So, we'll use Chat GPT here, and people say, well, you need to use please and thank you because you'll get better results. But do you need to use please and thank you when you're doing it? So here's an example of a chat I just made up. And, you'll notice in blue, I have underlined, I am a coach. So just as you would do when you're talking to a person, you introduce yourself as to who you are, and this really helps AI know from what lens are you going, what perspective. So tell them who you are, but also hello. And the use you can see, can you please help me? And, absolutely, blah, 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 blah. I say, thank you, right? So very polite. So, why am I doing that? And it takes me back to, what we hear or what I'm reminded of when I think of people who practice Buddhism. They say, we don't bow as we go into the temple because it's a sacred place. we bow to create the sacredness of the temple. Okay. And the secret is saying please and thank you does nothing for ChatGPT. What it does do work for is for you, right? So let's talk about the psychology behind that. So there's something called the mood elevator, what's been coined. Sen Delaney coined this a while ago to say we have all sorts of moods and emotions going through us, right? All on a continuum. From, very deep, angry emotions to very creative and grateful emotions, a full continuum. Sort of right at the ground floor when we come in is curiosity, sort of neutral. We're going to step in. We have the ability to go up or down on the elevator. So if we choose to go down, you can see, and on the cheat sheet too, there's lots. You could fill in your own emotions of what, you could be frustrated or stressed or burnout, all those keep on going down. They're all lower mood states. And in lower mood states, you do not have as much access to your cognitive abilities, to your perception, your problem solving, your decision making. I mean, this comes from your days of, reptilian limbic systems. You were focused on survival. You're stressed out, so you're going to be truly focused on very tunnel vision. Whereas if you go up the mood elevator and you're in those more positive, those more higher mood states of being patient, creative, insightful, being grateful, you actually have more access to positive, higher mood states, greater problem solving, greater imagination, greater perception, because you're not in a stress mode. So the very reason we say please and thank you is because courtesy is a way of putting us in a positive mood state. It puts us in towards that gratitude level, and it gives us higher capability to think. So it doesn't, people who say, yeah, please and thank you makes Chat GPT perform better. No, it makes you perform better because you're asking questions of greater cognitive ability and perception. I hope that makes sense. So to do know that whenever you find yourself sort of in that, maybe you're not hostile or angry, but maybe you're a little judgmental or frustrated, or you're not having your best day, if you can at least get yourself to curious, that ground floor, whew, that's a good step. At least you're out of that lower mood state. You could even ask, I'm curious why I'm in a bad mood today. That's a good start, okay? If you want to take the express car all the way up to the top, just stop, pause, and go, what am I grateful for? What am I grateful for? And get yourself in that higher mood state. Well, I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my kids, right? You cannot be grateful and angry at the same time. The mind cannot do that. So take the express button, get up there. Use those positive higher mood states when you're using AI because you will perform better. Okay? So that's the psychology behind that. So this one I say tongue in cheek because there's also, it's like, wow, how can you influence the sense of urgency? Well, it used to be before AI, you would say, hey, I need that by Tuesday. I need that by next week. Well, when you're working with AI, it's rather instantaneously, so you don't have to worry about that. But there have been people known, in fact, Ethan Mollick, who did the master class and AI. If any of you subscribe to Masterclass, is a really wonderful 3-part segment on AI. And he uses these examples of people who have actually gotten faster, more accurate analytical results by stating a sense of urgency to AI. Like saying things like, my boss will make me cry if you don't answer these questions, or my career's really depending on this, or, they've actually shown the accuracy of math problems to improve by saying, it's Star Trek Stardate 4732, and we're on a doomed mission. The only way to escape this wormhole is to solve this problem, So I just think it's fascinating. You can play around with that. But no, the responsiveness is not so much the issue, but they're saying in terms of analytical problem solving, the guy who's the expert on this is saying you do see a little more accuracy. Then he says it's a weird game. AI will respond differently depending on the spaces, the periods, the capitalizations. So just work with it like you would a human, right? Humans respond differently. AI will as well. So one thing we want to make sure of is that we always ask permission. So this is a very curious thing to do, because chances are, even though it looks very digital, right? It's a Word file, it's an Excel file, it's data. Somebody had their vested time and interest in producing that. And so asking permission before taking something and just feeding it into AI is always a polite, courteous, respectful thing to do. So it could be raw data that you're going to do. It could be voice of the customer data. It could be engagement survey data where you have verbiage and you just, it's like, look for themes and patterns in all these comments. It could be something that somebody wrote and you want it to critically analyze it. I've worked with young people where I always, say, would you mind if I ran your resume through AI and it will provide us with some options of maybe how to reframe or how we could state things, rather than just assuming they would want to do that. I don't own it, they do. So always asking for permission. And now we have even meetings like this. Usually it will ask you if you want AI to generate a transcript of this meeting. It might even be something that Michelle gets after this meeting. And AI, has the ability to analyze my talk or your responsiveness, and, but people knowing, even if the software will prompt or ask for permission, also asking ahead of time beforehand. It's respectful, it's kind to just say, is it okay with you? And doing that, before. I find that the AI transcriptions where it evaluates and interprets meaning out of meetings has great entertainment value. Lots of ums and ers are translated, and it's just like, it's interesting. I think it has a way to go yet, but I'm all for it. So let's talk about transparency and disclosure. So when exactly do you have to say you use AI? When do you choose to do that? When do you show that you've partnered with AI? How do you just put it all on the table and say, hey, I want to be respectful. I want to do this. I have a lot of friends who have this imposter syndrome around using AI. I mean, they're like, yeah, I think it's cheating. It's like, I'm not comfortable asking it to create something, or I'm feeling like I'm less skilled if I have to rely on something like that to do it. I should be skilled to it, or I'm not tech savvy enough to be able to use it. And we want to throw that ultimately out the window. I mean, it's like, no, I always say AI is rated E for everyone. It's there for everyone to use. And it's a tool. It's not a replacement for you. It's not a replacement for your skills. It is there to be a partner with you and to put it out there in the open. There's a learning curve. Absolutely. We all have one. So on the cheat sheet, it has imposter syndrome with a big X through it, if you have it, great, acknowledge it, start using it. It'll go away really fast because it's very easy to learn. And this is the part I like about it. And a lot of people are writing different tips and tidbits about this. Um, Using AI to become a better you. And you don't have to, if you're working on yourself, you don't have to reveal that to anybody, right? It's like use the tools that are out there. And there's a lot written on, if you just say, chat, how do I learn 10x? Everything's 10x, right? How do I learn 10x faster? How do I improve personally? There are a lot of really well organized things. And again, you can take these as opinions. You can agree with them, disagree with them, but sometimes the ideation is just, never thought about that. Like, I love this one, simplified breakdown. Here's a pro tip, and it will tell you exactly how to prompt AI. Like, here's the prompt, explain cold fusion in simple steps so that even a beginner can understand. You throw in your topic of choice. So look for these cheat sheets, and absolutely, you're working on yourself, you're building up your repertoire. A good way to do that. But when should you absolutely cite AI? When you're doing academic work, right? You're looking at sources, you're taking things from other people's work. You absolutely want to cite those. If you're taking coding, calculations, algorithms, anything like that, you want to acknowledge it. If you're doing that as part of your study, if it's professional or creative writing. And so with this, the professionalism, absolutely the same as above. Any of that content, analytic works comes into that, but now with the creative, it's the writing plus the text, the images. It could be music, it could be art, anything that's generated in a creative mode, you'd want to cite as well. Public communications, if you're using it in the terms of blogs and social medias, right? If you've used that to edit or draft or help ideate, there's nothing wrong with giving a little nod to AI to say, I use that. And then ethical considerations, with this, it's just the big global, and anything ethical, just consider that. And with that, I would say, make sure you're considering any organizations that you belong to. If a school you're working with has its own policy on AI usage, if an organization, a church, a community you're working with has a stance on AI, follow, abide to their ethical considerations. So, and then there's always the power of the word because. And I always like to mention this study and then just go, realize how much value that word because has, and use it freely. When you're asking for something or telling somebody, explain the why behind it. So this was a study done by Ellen Langer with Xerox machines. So you can imagine somebody copying at a Xerox machine, and somebody comes up and says, excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine? And 60% of the time when a person came up, they would be compliant with that and let them step in and just make their 5 copies and go on their way. And it was just, straight, may I use the Xerox machine? Take cuts 60% of the time. When they said, excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use the Xerox machine because I have to make copies? That went up to 93%. Wow. And what's fascinating to me is that's the same as saying, excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine because I need to use the Xerox machine? It's just sort of saying the same thing. But from 60% to 93%. When they said, excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine because I'm in a rush? It went to 94%. So they were actually not only saying that they wanted to take cuts, they needed to do, but why they actually did a little bit more specificity. So what they deduced from this, and there's a lot of writing, I put the source on there. The key to this is using the word because. Even though 60% of the time people were compliant and let the person take cuts, when the word because was used, significantly different of enabling that person to come in because they use the word because with sort of a pseudo reason for it. Okay. So I don't say you have to use because with AI or anything. It's just like, wow, know the power of that word and feel free to use it as you're explaining things and asking for things, maybe asking or telling people why you used AI. And maybe it was, I used AI because I wanted help with my ideation, you know. It's always good to put the why behind it. So when we talk about human and AI hybridity, so humans and AI coming together, um, you know, Kurzweil called this the singularity. And, you know, whether it happens or not, it's like, well, AI is going to be able to do many things, but empathy still remains pretty uniquely human, right? And we see digital assistants, you know, pushing out to us, hey, it's so-and-so's birthday today. Or do you remember this Facebook memory from 5 years ago? You know, or, you know, here's a calendar, but don't forget you've got that Zoom meeting at 2 o'clock, you know. So that's great. It's telling us all those things. Um, and you know, I think we sort of, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to ask you in a minute how you feel about those things. But there's also a generational aspect to it too. I just throwing this out there for consideration. We have a printing company in Grand Rapids, and it's interesting. They have told me that they have noticed that there has been a return by younger generations to the use of calling cards. And I just find that fascinating that they want their own customized individual calling cards to exchange, like the old Victorian or what we used to call business cards. And you know how much of that is done digitally now and just, you know, pair my phone to your phone and everything. But they, as a printing company, are noticing a big spike in this. And the other is just by older populations and younger populations, just notes, you know, note cards, stationery, things like that. People wanting to write personal touches to the art of writing. I just think that's interesting. So when we talk about empathy, that sort of touch of courtesy, that empathy of connecting with another individual, of walking in their shoes and sort of reaching out to them. I think those are great. We've got digital assistants helping to remind us of those, but maybe there's a part of that we can intentionally keep as well by just putting those little personal touches in there. So our last poll that I'm going to do today is just, you know, on this digital assistance things. I'm very curious. Like, if you've seen these, how do you usually respond to the automated responses that come out about birthdays or congratulatory announcements? Do you just, you know, it gives you, you know, like you can just push a button and say, happy birthday, very original, but you acknowledged it. Do you do that, you know, or do you edit one of them, or do you completely write it an original message, or do you ignore the message entirely?
Responses are coming in, and it looks like the majority, 50%, write a completely original message, followed by edit one of the pre-written options to make it personal.
That is so awesome, guys. Thank you. Yes, love it. Yay, keep it personal. Beautiful. All right, on the home stretch here. All right, just a light touch on what we need to watch out for and then how you can bring it home. So absolutely, it's not perfect AI. And, you know, I could watch cat videos and all the funny things they do all day. You know? So definitely, I think fake. And you know, you just when you see things, you need to sort of go, oh yeah, you know, if you see something, it's like if you're going to use it, confirm it with a couple of reputable sources before you move on. I teach at the university level, and a lot of times when I'm pulling in, like even this in the upper right photo that I used at the title slide, I ask Chat GPT for an image of a coffee shop, and it was like, the coffee shop has all young males in it. What's with that? There's no diversity in that shot, and so you just sort of have to ask it again, like what you need. For example, this. I wanted to have a slide that sort of showcased, the cheat sheet guide I was going to use. So I asked it to create a picture of a cheat sheet that said redefining courtesy. And I was like, could you do this again, but spell the word courtesy correctly? And this is what it gave me. So it gave me a cheat sheet, but you can see in the background redefining courtesy. And I was like, really? So I asked it again, chat, please make certain you are spelling courtesy correctly. And it said, yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I spelt it correctly, but missed it. Da, da, da. And then I told it, yes, I wanted it to do it again. And this is what I got. Along with the response, it now displays it correctly. So, it is not infallible, right? And so, you have to just take it with a grain of salt. Like this, for example, this will be in your slide deck. This is going to be my closing slide, but I'm like, nope, I'm using it here. So, if you ever, find something, want to discuss something, please feel welcome to reach out, give me a ping. I'm always open to talk. But I just wanted to have, the robot drinking tea, sort of courtesy. And I asked it, could you make it so the little pinky is sticking out, like a tea drinker in Victorian times? And I was like, what's going on with the teacup saucer? Being that it's floating. I don't get that. So I asked it to do it again. And this is what I got. And I'm like, okay, well, the robot has no mouth, so I don't know about drinking tea. It's probably not realistic. But I was like I explained, the pinky sticking out. The pinky is the little finger. It should be sticking out away. And I got, and this is what I got. And I'm like, okay, that teacup is floating. It's not, they're not even grasping the teacup. So I just gave up, and I'm going to write a book called Teaching My Robot How to Drink Tea. Because I think there's a whole novel there. I really do. So moving it forward, I ask you to think, how are you becoming aware about courtesy in this world of AI? Do you believe it has a place? What's your belief towards it? And can you take a stand or a commitment in how you personally are going to show up with it? And here are some ways you might think of how you could role model modern courtesy, like for your family or your team, if you have young children, and they could be working on something, they could be using AI, is to just ask and engage with them. What are you reading? What are you prompting on? What's it about? How does that make you feel? Engage in the conversation. If you're at work, and it could be, at your church, in your community, wherever it's, share openly about what have you found? What are your practices? Offer to teach others. And this is what I know. I don't know everything, but this is what I know. Or if there's a project or an initiative, say, let's try it out. Let's learn together. Or let's see if it can ideate anything that we haven't thought of yet. Or co-create. I mean, go ahead and do something with LinkedIn or Facebook, and, appropriately attribute that you've used it, but, draft something, let AI help brainstorm it, and add a citation that you used it, buff and wax it a little bit, post it. You don't have to post it to the world. You can post it to your friends, but some ways that you could just go, yeah, I could try one of those things. Maybe it starts at home with the conversation. Maybe it starts at school. But I'd like you to think about, how would you use AI in 2025? What's one thing you could do, or what's a practice that you do that you think really lends it to courtesy? Um, And what further questions do you have? And I'm going to turn it over to Michelle in a minute to close, but I just wanted to say thank you. And Bates has always just been such a pleasure to work with. And I just love the statement that, I see on your site about a Bates education fosters intellectual inquiry and reflection, personal growth, and a commitment to the world beyond oneself. And I just think that's so holding of what we talked about today, the world beyond. And so I thank you for your participation and sharing and listening very much. And Michelle, I'll turn it over to you.
If we do have a minute for a question or two, if anyone would like to unmute yourself, or if you feel free to drop it in the chat, we would be happy to answer that before I close. Give it a minute.
Rocky, hi, Rocky, Chuck James, class of 78. Are you paying for AI? Are you paying for any of the tools you're using?
I have a yearly subscription for Chat GPT-4.
Gotcha.
Very minimal.
Okay.
Thank you, Chuck.
But I believe there is quite a bit there that's out there for free of use. Yeah. May I ask why you ask that question?
I'm a Google guy, so I use Gemini, and everybody and their dog seems to be using ChatGPT. So I'm just trying to figure out. I used a supplement. One of my big AI apps is Grammarly.
Yes.
I'm a big Grammarly guy. I've got it enabled, etc. And they always, of course, they always want more money, but I'm doing free stuff. But I just was trying to figure out if you've gotten different returns from the free ChatGPT versus the paid ChatGPT. If you've had any difference.
Yeah. The reason I ask why you're asking is because I recently, my subscription was going to renew at the beginning of the year, and I did not renew it because I want to explore and differentiate I think there's so much happening in this space that I want to discern, like, really. And so I'm doing the due diligence. So thank you for asking that. Yeah. And anybody have any ideas of anything that they've sparked that it's like, this is something I do as a practice, and I think it's really courteous or kind?
I'm not really focused on that, to be honest, but I use it extensively in my startup, and have not only saved probably thousands and thousands of dollars on what I would have paid to get an expert answer to an issue, but frankly, the workflow is so much easier just to dialogue with ChatGPT. And particularly since I think it's 4.0 or whenever it was, they've hooked it up to the web. So now it includes web searches, and it can find, information that it wasn't trained on. It's been a tremendous boon to my business. I pay $25 a month, and we have a team account. I think I pay for 4 users, so it's $100 a month, and it's absolutely saves me, a lot. But more than that, I guess the other way to say it is that it expands the dimensionality of what I'm able to access and feed into our resource base in real time. So instead of having to spend time researching an answer, which sometimes becomes a real barrier because sometimes you just don't get to it and it's too much work to do in the short term. It's just really fast place to go to get really, really detailed answers. I mean, I just asked it a question this morning about a useful but poorly documented, and it's a fundraising, it's a capital raising management platform it's good, but it's horribly documented. And I was surprised it was able to give me an answer about how to use a particular feature that's pretty deep in it, and it just kind of went right through it. But it just got lots of stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we use it for creative. I prompted. I read a great study, by the way, for Bates's. This was I think it was at MIT or Harvard. They did a course on it, and they found that the people that were trained in liberal arts, they sort of wanted to look at, or one of the things they looked at was how do people who are trained in tech as engineers or software engineers or more technically focused people fare in doing a project with ChatGPT versus people with a humanities background. And they found that those of us who are educated in things that are heavily dependent on language really made a much, much better progress and came out much better on their project because the key is asking sort of the right level of generality and understanding how to converse with it in a way that you would you know, in a discussion group or a class, as opposed to trying to apply the specificity of an engineering mindset. And
Yeah.
and that was, I mean, it was heartening, but it was also kind of opened my eyes about why me and my co-founder is also, or not co-founder, CTO, who's also a Batesy, are able to sort of use it so well.
Yeah.
So,
Adam, thank you for sharing that. That's,
I
yeah,
was a
I
little curious
love,
about why we were doing etiquette versus maybe something a little more nuts and bolts, but that's a question I'll ask. Maybe I'll ask Michelle at some
yeah.
point. I think there's a lot to be done for us, particularly those of us who've been out of school for 20 or more years on this topic. But
There's so much to be
I
done.
would
Yeah,
I would frame it
absolutely.
maybe a little bit differently than etiquette. I might frame it like how to be productive and how to think about using it in your life. I'm also using it to write a children's book right now, so just as a writing partner, it's great. It's great.
Yeah, great. I love how you demonstrate about it. It allows you to create capacity for the other things you need to do, right? That's what it buys in. And the MIT study is fascinating as well. Thank you for
Like the analogy that I sometimes use even with Google is that, like, when I was a kid, I had to go to the library or go to a dictionary to get answers.
Yes.
So when Google came along, I get answers to a lot more things. ChatGPT just turbocharges that, because I can actually have a conversation and get to it, you know, get to a much more well-defined solution point to a problem much more quickly. And that just makes me think much more broadly about, well, gee, I bet I can, here's this weird left field idea. Let me go explore it. And something I would never, I couldn't do before, ever. So it's great.
Yeah.
I like it.
Thank you everyone so much. We are out of time. I just want to wrap the program here. And if you do have any questions, please email alumni@bates.edu, and I can always forward them to Rocky as well if you want to continue the conversation. But I do want to say a big, big thank you to Rocky. We can't thank you enough, and Lighthouse Life Design for sharing this important program on AI with the Bates community. I also want to thank all of you for participating, and I hope that you found this program to be insightful. Sure. Our next program will take place on January 21st, when Ann Shields herself will present the topic Refresh, Reset, Revitalize, a 3-step cleaning for your overwhelmed life. This sounds like a very fitting program to start a brand new year. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day and the holiday season. Be well.